Alrighty, welcome. I'm going to be doing a quick workshop on Stager 3D from Adobe. Um, if you're interested in mocking up some of your products that have a little bit more of a 3D look to it, I know some students may have a cereal box or other products that are designed, and putting it flat on a portfolio might not be as engaging as it would be to show the actual box in use. So what we'll do here is go over kind of the steps and do a quick overview of the interface for Adobe Substance 3D Stager. It's a great, powerful program. Again, really great for mockups, and it's pretty straightforward. You don't really need to know way too much information about 3Ds or texture. There are templates that are available either on stock.adobe.com or other websites like TurboSquid that you might be able to get some free models, but Stager 3D also comes with some stock models that you can use. And before we dive into it, I just kind of wanted to give you a sense of how it's going to work. Essentially, the textures that you put on there, which would be the images of your work that you're putting on top of an object, kind of works like a sticker almost. You can place it and stretch it and move it around the object so that it's placed perfectly the way you want it. And then once it is placed, you can render that object in an environment. So the cool thing is that you can always add new things into the environment if you wanted to kind of create a place setting, or you can focus in on just the object that you want to show off. So in our case, I created a really quick version of a cereal box here. Mostly placeholders, but you'll get the idea of what you can accomplish. You might have yours set up a little bit differently, but essentially what we're doing is taking each face of the box and separating it out into the front, the back, the sides, the other side, and possibly a top of the box. If you really want to get super into it, you can also create the bottom of the box, but typically the bottom of the box is probably going to end up being empty unless you might have a barcode on it. I put my barcode on the side over here. In either case, you can take it into Photoshop, or you can use Illustrator and separate each section out that you're going to place on top of an object. So I kind of already have it separate into different artboards, and I already exported it into different images here. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different images. Excuse me, one for the front, one for the back, 2 for the sides, and 1 for the top over here. And I'm going to be using these JPEGs to place into my 3D object. Okay, so that being said, let's open up Stager 3D, Adobe Substance 3D Stager, sorry. You can find that right here in your apps if you open up the Adobe Creative Cloud, and you'll see Substance Stager 3D right over here. And if you click on open, that'll open it up. And I kind of already have pressed the open button. So from here, it kind of gives you your intro. I'm going to go ahead and close that intro over here and just make this really large so we can see everything that we're working with. And we're going to create a new project. And when we click on a new project, we see this interface over here with a 3D area. I do want to talk a little bit about how to navigate that 3D area so that you can move things around and see how things are affected by lighting and placement. So if you click your left mouse button and put it on this middle screen, you are able to select objects. Kind of like in Photoshop or in Illustrator where you're drawing a selection box, that's what that's going to do. If you hold down the Option button or Alt button on PC, Option button on a Mac, and the left mouse button, and you click and drag it, you can kind of rotate around the world here. So it gives you different perspectives. If you hold the space bar, you get a little hand that pops up, and you'll get to move the world side to side if you click on that left mouse button, and you can move it. Whoops, a little behind here. Should be able to move it. That's weird. Not sure why it's not working. It used to work that way, that you can hit the button and move it, hit the space bar and move it left to right. It's been a little weird for me. But you can also, these are some navigation tools over here on the toolbar. So you have your selection tool over here, and then down here you have kind of like a pan tool. So you can click on that tool over here and pan over. Why is it being weird? There we go. I'm not sure why it was being weird over here, but right mouse button click and spacebar, and you can pan left and right. I think I was pressing the left one. My apologies. If you hold down the spacebar and click on your right mouse button, then you'll be able to pan left and right and up and down. And if you just hold your Option button and your left mouse button, then you can kind of rotate around. So those are the basics on how to kind of navigate the world over here, or your environment over here. The next thing that I kind of wanted to show you is these asset panel over here. If you don't see that asset panel, it might be under libraries, so you might have to click on starter assets over here. You can always go to that should always actually be here, but if you ever find that you don't see it, make sure you click on show or hide interface. That could make things disappear. So under window, show hide interface, and everything will come back. So in this section, in this starter assets, there are a couple different things to know. So you have materials that you can use that reflect light differently. So your object might feel different based on how the light is touching it and how it's reflecting, right? So you might have a metal object, which will react differently from a matte object. So matte object is kind of softer, more diffuse, so the light doesn't scatter as sharply. Matte would be great for, like, for example, a cardboard box that we're using that has soft sort of material, as opposed to a metal surface. Usually cereal boxes aren't made out of metal, so we won't hit metal for that. We'll use matte. And then we also have all these different types of materials that you can kind of add and use. If you scroll down, there's concrete, there is ceramic, there's fabric materials that you can use, leather materials, liquids, marble and granite, so a bunch of different types of materials that you can use, and with different settings. So like these metal settings have all these different things to them, all these different kinds of textures that metal might have. So you have like a brushed metal, etc. All right, paint, you have paper, so you can use different paper grains, glossy paper, satin-like brown paper, and all these materials that are kind of here by default, you can kind of change the settings on. So you can pick different color settings for them as well. So we had red construction paper. You can pick this grainy paper and then change the settings to make it red instead. All right, that being said though, I'm going to kind of just slide all the way down over here past these materials. And instead, what I'm looking for is objects. So in here, we have 4 different categories of things that we can kind of add to our scene. Right now we're looking at this little ball icon with a highlight. Those are our materials. So again, liquids, metals, ceramics, paper. Then we have lights that we can add to our scene, and different lights kind of make our environment react a little bit differently. So you can add a little bit more drama, or you can add a little bit of isolation, or you can kind of make it generic directional, so the lighting is sort of lighting up everything. It's going to depend on how you're placing things in your scene and what your objects are. And then we have, and this is a cool feature, images over here. So there are some images by default that are already in here that you can place into the scene. And when you place them into the scene, they can actually be used to kind of place your objects in the scene with the correct lighting that the scene is using, and with the same perspective that the scene is using. To show that off, I'm going to place an object in there first into our scene so we can see what that looks like. And the way we're going to do that is we'll go back over here into this box over here where we see models. And we have some basic models and products that kind of come by default. You can add your own if you upload an OBJ file, and you can find those either on stock.adobe.com, which is the most reliable one, but there's also like Turbo Squid and other websites that have 3D models that you can either pay for a license, or some of them are free that you can download. But we'll start with our basic box to create a cereal box, and we'll add decals or texture to that box. So as you can see from the models over here, they have all sorts of different kinds. If you created a milk carton, you can use that as well. There's lots of different options here, from a food can to a pile of paper that you can even use as like a business card mock-up. There's phones, laptops, chairs, a bunch of different objects here that you can put in and place in there. I've tried this generative thing that's down here. It doesn't really work very well, so I don't really necessarily, I mean, you can experiment with that and see what it comes out with. But I typed in standard family size cereal box, and it came out really bad. So the generative AI still has a little bit of work to do in terms of creating the assets that you might need. So the other sources that are available, you know, like Turbo Squid or stock.adobe.com will probably end up working better for you. But for our demo here of a cereal box, I'm going to just create a cube. And all I have to do is click on my basic shapes, and I see this cube right here, and I can just click on it and it'll pop up right in my scene. Okay, so I'm going to just click the space bar and my right mouse button just to kind of move it around, and I can kind of press that option button to spin around that object and see what it's like in the environment that it's in right now. All right, so with a cube, since the cube is 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters by 20 centimeters. I can see in my properties panel to the left over here how big and what size that box is. I'm gonna make some small changes and adjustments to the size of that box. So I have set up my cereal box to be 8.5 by 11 by 2.5 by 2.5. So my width I want to be 8.5 inches. So I'm just gonna type in 8.5 inches right there. And that's gonna convert it to centimeters for me. And then for my height, I'm gonna type in 11 inches. And the depth is also going to be 2.5 inches. So I'm gonna write 2.5 inches over here. And that's going to create my box over here. And then as I kind of, zoom in, I'm zooming in and zooming out by holding the Option button and my right mouse button. But if I want to rotate, I want my left mouse button. So I can kind of see that this is now sort of like a cereal box over here, and it's matching the dimensions that I already had built it in inside of Illustrator. So let's take a quick peek into Illustrator. This box over here, my second artboard, if I go to Document Setup, okay, and click on Edit Artboard, sorry, and I click on my Artboard 2 over here, it's 8.5 by 11 inches. So I want to basically try to match one-to-one, just easier to do it that way, what my dimensions are of my cereal box over here. So 8.5 wide, 2 inches thick over here for the top, and this one is 11 high and 2.5 inches wide. So these will sort of be placed on top in each section of my box. We'll go back over here to Stager, and on my left panel over here, where it gives me my properties and information about my object, I'm going to be able to do a couple things here. One of the things that I can do is add that paper texture, because right now it's by default. It might end up kind of look a little plasticky, but I kind of want my box to look like it's cardboard, right? So I'm going to use more of a paper texture to it. So I'm going to click on my left side over here where I have my materials, this little ball with a highlight. And then I'm going to scroll down till I see paper. And I'm going to select some paper that kind of works for me. Now there's different kind of papers here. This is paper cardboard. That might be perfect for me, and I'm going to use that. So all I have to do to use that is I can click and drag this circle or this sphere of material and place it right on top of my object. So I'm just going to grab it and then put it right on top of there. And when I do, that's going to take that material and turn it into a cardboard material. And then, since I have my object selected over here, I'm going to notice that under the Materials pad, Object over here, and then Materials right over here, is going to give me details about what material I have on my object. And it's showing me that I have paper cardboard. And if I scroll down a little, if I scroll down a little, I have this option to transform my cardboard material. If I needed to make it a little bit smaller or larger, I can kind of control that texture by using this repeat section. So how many times the pattern of that cardboard is going to repeat on the object. So if I increase the X, it's going to make, it's linked right now because I have a little constrained proportions there. If I wanted to just turn that off and then just hit repeat X, it would sort of allow me to add more texture, make it wider or thinner based on the number that I'm putting in there. I'm actually going to want it to stay proportional, but if I want it to be a little bit smaller for that texture, then I can always increase that repeat. Or I can decrease it and my texture becomes a lot smaller, but a little bit more fuzzy because I'm zoomed in. So I tend to like to repeat it a little bit more, sort of try to get it to a nice realistic looking texture. And I can, as I scroll down even further, I have some more options for myself here. I have this substance setting where I can control the resolution of my image. If I want to go super big, I can. So the higher quality, the better. I'm probably going to go ahead and do 4096, so it's a nice HD quality when I render it out. And then I have the seed for the texture that can kind of randomize things a little bit. And this cool thing, cardboard color. So I can actually click on this color and I can change the color to be red if I wanted to, like that. Or I can change it to whatever color I need to, like white, for example. Then I have inserts color over here. So those are those little things, those little tiny details, and I can change those if I need to as well. And I can also use these sliders to kind of adjust things the way I want them to look. So I can kind of change that color to orange, and it'll kind of use that as the inserts color. But I kind of want it to be more on the neutral side, so I'm going to go back and actually kind of make that a darker gray over here. So it might take some time to kind of render it out to give you a preview, but you get that control of it. Okay. And you can kind of play around with all these different settings. There's opacity, so if you want certain things to kind of be see-through, you can bring them opacity down and play around with all these different settings. You can have a lot of fun with this. But this is kind of where I want to start off over here with these settings. I'm going to bring this all the way up over here, and under Actions, in my Actions panel, this is where I'm going to start adding my textures or decals or stickers on top of my object. So there is a button over here. I might need to click on that to turn that into a standard model. And once I click on that, then I can place an image on the model. So basically what Convert to Standard Model does is it takes the settings that I had, the size, and it kind of makes them baked into the model. So once I click Place Image on here, it's going to ask me what image I want to place. I have my files over here in Serial, and I already converted each image into its separate panel. And for the front of the box, I'm going to select my front panel here, and I'm going to click on Open, and that's going to place it right inside here. And it kind of placed it in the middle over there, off to the side, so I need to kind of adjust this. So I'm just going to use my Option button and my left mouse button, click and drag so that I can kind of adjust how I'm seeing it. And then I'm going to use these handles over here to adjust the size of my sticker. So I'm going to actually kind of, let me switch over to this tool over here, this regular tool rather than the pan tool. And then I'm going to move it by clicking and dragging the image. And I can make it larger, by grabbing that top button, top square, and kind of placing it right over there. I might need to adjust it a little bit. And right over there like that. And then I would grab the sides and also adjust the sides over here like that. So I'm kind of going from edge to edge over here on this box and making sure that everything is covered there like that. Okay, so that's looking pretty good. And then I'm going to hit my Option button again and my right mouse. Whoops, something's going on over here. And then I'm going to move to the next side of the panel over here. And I will, well, I can actually kind of adjust it a little bit more. Because if I'm looking at it over here, it's kind of looking like it's going a little bit too far on this side. One thing that I'm noticing too is that as I'm kind of moving this over here, the lighting is really dark over here. So I just might want to change the lighting over here to make it a little bit more diffuse. So instead of using these regular lights in my environment over here, which I don't have any lights, I'm going to click on this directional light to kind of give me a little bit more lighting around. So I'm just going to click on that for directional lights. And then I'm going to move that light maybe this way and rotate it. Whoops. And rotate it a little bit so I get a little bit more light. Goodness, it doesn't want to work with me here. Okay, let's try that again. More like that, and then whoops, I'm trying to zoom out. It's kind of tricky with this mouse for some reason. I'm going to move this light over this way. I might have to do it manually. So let's click on Transform over here, or Intensity. We'll bring up the intensity of this light, and we'll probably end up turning this light off later anyway. Let's click on Transform, and maybe, here we go, Rotation Y, and we'll adjust that rotation manually this way. And there we go. That kind of works. I can kind of see, whoops, a little bit too close there. This I can see a little bit better over here now. It takes a little bit of playing around with sometimes. Okay, so this is kind of coming off a little bit too much on this side. So let's click on our box, click on our materials, and we're going to click on our graphic right over here. And that will let us control, whoops, just a little more. And we're going to move that a little that way. Like that. And that's looking close enough. Okay, so the next step is to do the same thing with our other panels. So I'm going to add another sticker over here, another decal, and I'm going to add my side panel over here. And I'm going to click on Open, and that'll pop up over here. And I kind of want to drag this to the side now, over here, and I'm going to adjust the size. So I'm going to make this larger over here. Whoops, a little too far. And then a little wider over here. Maybe something like that. And we'll rotate to kind of see where we're at on this side. Something on like that, and then we'll just make it a little bit wider. And adjust. So kind of like a virtual sticker placement is exactly what it is. Adobe Substance 3D actually calls these decals as well. So we can go around placing it on every single side of our box, but if we're not going to show the back of our box, we don't really need to put it on the back of our box. Depends if you're showing that or not. I'll go ahead and I'll just finish it off real quick by adding this other side panel, and we'll just complete it so we can have two versions rendering. So we can show the front and the back, because we want to highlight our design. And that means highlighting everything that we design, including the front and the back. So something like that. We'll rotate it again over here. And then we're going to add it to our back panel. So again, clicking this button over here, place image on model. We'll add the back of our box. And then we'll kind of have to adjust the size of it. So let's bring that up from edge to edge. Maybe that's a little bit too far up. We'll just move it slightly down here like that. And then get that side like that over here. Cool, so that's looking pretty good on all sides, except for the top. We're going to add our top panel by, again, adding another image with that button right where it says Actions and that little sticker icon. So this is my top. I'm going to open that up and just drag it up to the top over here. And then adjust the size. Whoops. Sometimes it's a little tricky. Little more. Bless you. All right, something like that. And then we'll stretch out the sides to make it go to that edge right there. And that's kind of how we can set it up. So now that we have our object set up, we have our box of yummos, we can now place that into an environment. And we can actually get rid of this lighting over here. So when we're over here on our scene panel, we can take that directional light and we can delete that light, because we're actually going to use an image and we're going to pull the lighting information from that image. So I'm going to click on that directional light. I'm going to unlock it. It's locked. And we're going to click on delete right down there. And that's going to get rid of that directional light. This cube over here is our cereal box. If you want to rename it, it's always, whoops, cereal, always good to name your objects. And then now that the cereal box is set up, you can create a copy of that cereal box and show off the back of it by rotating it. But before we start putting it in, start playing around with duplicates, let's put it in an environment. So we're going to go back to our assets panel here on the left side, and we're going to click on this little images button. And you can use any of the images that are available here, but I had one that I downloaded already that I like better than the ones that they have offered me over here. So I'm going to open up my serial panel over here, and I have this nice image of an empty table with milk for my cereal, and I want to use that one. So I'm just going to simply drag and drop that into here like that. Sometimes, well, if drag and drop doesn't work, like it didn't for me, we will go into File, and we're going to import an image as a background. So we're going to go to File, Import, Image as a background, and then we'll pick our image, which is this Adobe stock image right here. I'm going to click on Open, and that's going to use my image as a background. But everything's all kind of weird now, right? The image looks fine the way it is, but my box of cereal is all in the wrong perspective. So Substance actually has this really cool feature where once I import that image, I can click on this match image button right here, and it'll automatically match the lighting perspective and the canvas size to the image. So pretty automatic, pretty awesome. I'm gonna click on that and watch the magic happen. I'm gonna set the camera output size to the image aspect ratio of the image that we imported, perfect. And then I'm gonna click on make sure that create lights and match camera's perspective is on there. Creates lights will let me detect the light sources, and that'll be automatic. So once I click OK, it will do its best to create the perspective and the lighting that I need for this image. Sometimes it takes a few seconds for it to calculate. And didn't really quite match the way we wanted it to match. Actually, I think maybe it did, but we are in, whoops, the wrong, whoopsie. Let's try that again. We are in the wrong, no, actually that kind of makes sense because I guess if I think about it, the light's coming in from the window, right? So we might have to kind of adjust it ourselves. But one thing you can kind of do is if it doesn't work the way that we want it to work, we can always change things around a little bit, right? Because we're in a 3D environment. So let's click on our environment over here. And we can click on lights over here. And I'm going to actually bring the rotation of the lights around a little bit over here so that it's actually, whoops, and the intensity. More light on here. And we'll rotate it a little bit. There we go. Just something like that so we can see the yummos. We can kind of zoom in over here, and I recommend, as far as the perspective goes, that we can actually kind of adjust things in the camera settings, kind of like this. I'm kind of looking to line up those grid patterns over here to the patterns of the table over here. And that'll help me kind of adjust to the correct perspective if the auto perspective didn't work. And of course, we can also pan up and down. Oops. We can sort of pan up and down if we need to for the camera angle. And we can make it larger as well. So if we click on, our environment, our ground, camera. I'm sorry. We want to click on camera. And that will kind of help us under transform with all these positions. So scale, we can always pull it back a little bit or make it larger. Oops, so we're going to make it, I just kind of want to make that a little bit larger here. Oh, you know what? I think you want viewport camera. Nope, not our viewport camera, our camera. Okay. But we can, there we go. Here's the position. We're changing the position left and right of the actual camera. Rotation of the camera up or down so we can kind of match it to that perspective there. Or you can do it manually with the move tools. Whoops. I kind of want it a little larger, so I'm going to zoom in a little bit more. Whoops, wrong one. This way, sorry. something like that. And that's looking pretty decent. I want my Y position to be a little bit lower though. So it's a little bit closer up front over here. And then you can kind of have fun with this cereal box. You can kind of rotate it then. Whoops, wrong one. I think I want Y or Z. Nope, I want the Y axis. Rotate it so that I can kind of see that part over here. I can then click on my object and just kind of move it back a little bit this way, maybe, in my scene here, like that. And I'm actually going to copy this so I can see the back of my cereal as well. So I'm going to I'm just going to click on that cereal and copy it right over there, duplicate it, and then I can move my second cereal box over and rotate it. Whoops, went too far. Move it over here. We'll rotate it so I can see the back. A little too far. I can kind of maybe move it behind that cereal box. Maybe I'll move this in front a little bit more. And however you kind of want to place it, you can kind of play around with whatever placement you think is ideal to show off the artwork. But once you're happy and satisfied with the placement in the 3D world over here, then you can start to render that out. And this is the fun part. This part might take a little bit longer because it's got to calculate a bunch of things when it does render. But it's a great way to kind of show off a bunch of different angles of your product that you created. And of course, you can always add more lights if you feel that it's not bright enough. You can always add another directional light over here. And I'm actually going to do that. I'm going to pull this back over here a little bit. And the directional light is facing that way. Let's bring it up a little bit. And then with that directional light under the object, I'm going to bring the intensity up a little bit so it's a little bit brighter so I can see that front. Then if you click on camera, there's a couple last details that you could add if you're interested, and that is using a depth of field. So the depth of field will kind of let you mimic focus things depending on where you click on to set the focal point and how much of a blur amount you set. I'll go a little bit more extreme just to show that feature off. But when you click on set focal point, it'll look at that particular point in the 3D world, and it'll use that depth of field like a real camera would to blur things that aren't in its focal point. So if I click on this front of the box over here with that focal point setting over here, oops, I forgot to activate it, click OK. Then I'm going to set the focal point right over here. If I make the blur amount really extreme, then the background over here is really going to blur. I can preview what my render is going to look like by clicking on this setting on top of my menu over here, and I can do a preview. Whoops. By clicking on ray tracing over here. And usually it does a pretty decent job. There it goes. It takes a couple seconds for it to render out. But because I have the blur amount set to such an extreme amount, everything's super blurry if it's not in that focal range. So I do kind of want to make sure that it looks good. So let's actually bring that focal point, that blur amount down to maybe about 11 over here. And then it's going to kind of show me how blurry the back is over here and where the focus is on the front over here. It's a really rough preview. Once we're happy with it though, if it looks good to us in terms of how we want to show our 3D environment and our artwork in the mockup, we're going to click on this render tab in the top left corner. And that's where we have our render settings. It's gonna give us a new window. It's gonna take a little bit to render, but we have our settings over here. And for portfolio pieces, we probably do wanna have a nice high preset over here. The more samples it runs, the longer it's gonna take, but the more accurate it's gonna be in terms of how light's bouncing off of objects. You can set a max time. If you do have a time limit, you can set that. Otherwise, it's going to render until it's complete. And of course, the resolution, we're gonna go with full resolution here. The viewport camera is set at 3100 by 2100, and we can always change those settings, but those settings are based on our image. So we're gonna keep it at our image resolution. We'll want to change the export file name. So I'm going to call this box render. If you wanted to override the camera size, you can click on that and you can make it whatever size you need it to be, but I'm not going to override it. Well, actually, now I think I have to. Whoops. So we're actually going to, yep, I'm going to update that to 2400. Let's make it 3200. Okay. And then it's going to ask you where you want to save it to. This one says the desktop. I'm just going to save it over here to my documents in my serial folder. And what format we want to export it to. So you can export it to a JPEG. You can also export it to a PSD file. The PSD file is useful because it gives you the ability to edit things, and it renders out different layers. So it'll actually render out a mask for your blur and a couple other settings that you'll be able to kind of go in and save it, update things, maybe clean some stuff up if you need to. So that's what I recommend. If you wanted to just create a JPEG, you can just have it straight as a JPEG ready to go and put up on the web. But I'm going to click on PSD at 32 bits because I like knowing that I have all these settings, all the higher quality options here. And then I'm just going to click on render, and unfortunately we have to wait for it to render. So that's where we kind of wait. So as this renders, we're going to kind of just sit, let it render, and once it finishes, we can go over how we can go into it in Photoshop. But usually it'll give you a nice little preview of how long it should take. So there's a countdown over here. So we'll kind of just hang out. You can fast forward through the video after the recording because it'll be kind of silent at the moment. I'll try to edit it. We'll see if I can edit out this part, but you might just have to fast forward. Well, thank you.
Right.
So yeah, about 4 more minutes. 25% of the way done. While you're waiting though, you can always take a little snapshot over here. This is a little camera button. If you take a snapshot, it'll save your render at its current progress. And you can save it as a quick PNG if you like, just to see where that snapshot is. It's usually gonna look just like the preview for the most part. Snapshot. So it still has a little way to go. There's some blurring that it needs to update and fix down here. And it's kind of also revealing a little bit of imperfections over here. So I might need to go back and kind of adjust the placement of the back of my box over here. I can see a little bit white cardboard on the bottom there and a little white on top over here on this side and this side. So there might be some adjustments that I need to go back and do. I can always stop the render and fix it. But for the purposes of the demo, I'm just gonna let it finish rendering out and we'll see what that kind of looks like. Now, because I clicked on override camera size, I have a little bit of extra space over here from that image, from my image over here. But the good news is that inside of Photoshop, after it saves it as a PSD, I can always crop that image, or I can move that image around to match what I want it to match. So, almost halfway there. Of course, there isn't anything to stop you from doing other things while this is rendering. You can always go into Photoshop or Illustrator and make adjustments or any additional things you might want to add while it's rendering. Or use another program to work on other things at the same time. You just kind of got to be a little bit patient here. The larger the resolution, the higher quality preset you use. If you set the samples to be, 1024 instead of 512 like it shows over here, then it's going to take twice as long because it's going to sample and ray trace the lighting. But it can be very, very useful to kind of make really unique and engaging mock-ups. Oh, one other thing to mention while we're kind of watching this render is that there are settings for your object, and you can add like reflections. And so you get like a reflection on the table. If it wasn't a wooden table, if it was a different kind of table that might be more of a glass table that has a reflection of objects, you can add those details in there as well by clicking a checkbox and then adjusting the sliders for how much of the reflection there is. So it's a really fun program that you can do a lot of cool things with. Setting up entire scenes like rooms, and setting up mock-ups of an entire, let's say, for example, a conference. Let's say you're going to a conference and you have a bunch of different decorations for the conference. You can set up a little bit of a preview of what your booth might look like, including your branding. And of course, product shots like this, if you don't have the ability to, say, take an actual photograph of the product, you can kind of use this as a way to mock things up, specifically at the angles that you want to shoot it at, or the angles that you want to highlight it at, that you might not get the opportunity from regular stock templates because they are, well, they're static. But with this, you can kind of adjust that. And you can also create PNGs that have transparent backgrounds. So you can use that in websites or other assets to show off the product as well. So a lot of different ways that you can kind of use Stager, and just another option for you to kind of make a little bit more of an engaging mock-up of the work that you created. And I hope this is useful for you. And whether you use it for your portfolio or not, you know, that's another additional program that you can kind of add to your skill set. A lot of it is exploration, kind of play around with the settings, with the sliders, see how that affects your light. Always trying to match the environment. So here we go. It has rendered. It took about 8 minutes and 10 seconds to render. And this is a final render of how it looks like. So we can see all the milk over here. Maybe the lighting was a little bit too bright, but the nice thing is that we can kind of adjust some of those things inside of Photoshop since we saved it inside of a PSD file. Down here, our render status. If you click on those 3 buttons, you can show the render inside of your Finder. And you can open up that Photoshop file. And inside that Photoshop file, you have a few different images over here. You have your depth field over here. You have object selection masks. So you can kind of use those to isolate certain things. And of course, you even have a background layer over here. So from here, you can kind of adjust things if you needed to. So if this lighting was a little bit too much, then I can always add an adjustment layer for my brightness or contrast or my levels over here to kind of bring it down a little bit and make things, well, let's isolate it to just the render. Sorry, where's my clipping mask? There we go. And we can kind of just adjust just the render over here. Oh, that's why it's looking weird. Actually, yeah, there we go. Okay. Want to hide that one. There we go. Okay, now I can kind of adjust it over here however I might need to. Something more like there looks a little bit more natural with that lighting. So that's the nice thing about saving it as a PSD file. It separates out the background from the foreground of your objects, and you can adjust things as needed or as necessary for the rest of the image here. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that workshop, and I hope you found it useful, and good luck.